Welcome back to Inside Voices, a podcast by teachers for teachers, where we talk about all things education, from top technology tips all the way through to pedagogical practices. I'm your host, Laura.
And I'm David.
And remember that in here, we use our inside voices. Now, this week's episode is all about something I think should be at the top of every teacher's to-do list, and that is teacher wellbeing and how we take care of that, managing the workload. At the moment, there is an alarming rate of teachers leaving the profession, and that seems to be a global issue.
Yeah.
And it seems to also be teachers who are in their kind of first 5 years of the profession. So a question for you, David, to start us off is going to be, what is something that you do every week or every day to sort of take care of your own well-being and something that promotes that side of things for you?
So I've got like a serious one and maybe a kind of non-serious one. My non-serious one is Starbucks. It has,
of course,
every
absolutely.
week. I don't know if it is a non-serious one though, because we go every week and one of us goes and gets a coffee on a Friday. So it's like a little treat on a Friday, something to look forward to. It's something that I like doing. Yeah, it maybe is a bit expensive for a coffee, but it's something that I look forward to. So I don't know, I think it is serious and it's not serious, but it's definitely Starbucks. The serious one for me was I made a conscious decision when I was in my probation year, my first year of teaching, sorry. And the conscious decision was never to work on the weekends. I don't really think about that because sometimes I do find myself on a Sunday night marking homework or uploading homework to Microsoft Teams or something. And I'm not as strict with it as I once was. But I made the decision that for my well-being, I was not going to be taking work home on the weekends. And to be honest, very rarely take work home during the week as well. Now, there's a caveat to that. I don't have a family. I don't have a wife and I don't have children. I live very close to my school. There's all these different kind of caveats to that, but I think generally that's the one that keeps well-being in check for me. I'm not letting my workload overwhelm me.
Yeah, I think you make a good point though by saying everyone's home life is really different, so it sort of depends on that. But also in terms of taking work home, that was so much easier before COVID, because at least certainly our experience, a lot of the things were paper-based before COVID.
Yeah.
And I always think, if you take your work into your house, you're sort of disrupting your space for relaxation and whatever you like to do in your home to just chill out.
Exactly.
But when things are paper-based, it's easier to say, I'm not taking that stack of books home and carrying them out the school and then bringing them back, where you made a good point that we upload homework to, Microsoft Teams. Your laptop's just sitting there. So it can be really tempting. And I think
totally
the temptation is there to just, I'll just do a quick half an hour on here. I'll just quickly mark this. I'll quickly upload this. And it is really tempting because I'm the same. I try not to do things over the weekend, but the last 2 Sundays I've sat and marked the homework at 6 o'clock at night and then sorted the next week's because it's there. Yeah. And if I can get it out the way before Monday, then that sort of helps in the long run of the week. But you got to find the joy in the little things, don't you? Because we're talking about the kind of Starbucks side of things. I know it might sound a little bit silly, but you do have to find the joy in the little things that you do that make you, you play a lot of football, you do a lot of sports to support that well-being side of things as well. Whereas, you play your sports until 11 o'clock at night.
Play football.
He takes it very seriously. Until 11 o'clock at night though, and I'm I've been in my bed for 3 hours at that point.
We play, because just the way that the time works, we play 9:30 to 10:30 on a Wednesday night, right in the middle of the week. And to be honest, on Thursday mornings, I am flagging because I get in the house at 11:30 and you're still kind of buzzing from football, and it's not great, but it is something that I enjoy doing. And I made the conscious decision as well when I became a teacher that I wasn't going to let it overtake. Okay, it has overtaken my personality, I suppose, but I wasn't going to let it overtake my complete social life. So in your first year of teaching, it is very intense. And I think a lot of people allow themselves to be overwhelmed by that. Whether that's because they don't have, good mentors or people around them giving a good advice, I don't know. But you need to, in that first year of teaching, you need to set out parameters for this is what my career is going to look like for the next 5 years. This is what I'm going to be as a professional. I don't want to be the person that's working until 8 o'clock at night every single night. I don't want to be the person that is taking work home on the weekend every single weekend. I don't want to be the person that is blowing off my friends and telling them I can't come to things because, you know, I've got work to do, or I can't make social events because I've got this and that to do. The work will always be there, and you need to make those conscious decisions.
It's like blurred boundaries, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you're someone with clear boundaries of, like you're saying, I'm not taking work home. I'm not taking work home at the weekends. And that's no judgment to anyone who does, of course, take work home or do work at their houses, because everyone is different. You know, you'll see it in your schools. There's people who, like you said, have families and children to go home to, and they go and collect them. They have to go and collect them from school.
They have to go at 3:30. They have to run out the door, get them from nursery. 100%.
Childcare. And I honestly take my hats off to people who can do that, because I would be exhausted.
I don't know how they do it.
No, but then they have no choice, you know, to take something home or work lunch or work break, whatever it is they need to do, because that's just where their boundaries are. But I think if you're not clear in your boundaries and saying, okay, I'm okay with working 1 lunchtime a week or 2 lunchtimes a week,
Of
or,
course.
you know, I would rather work my lunch than stay later. So if I'm having a really busy day, I would rather just quickly grab something and go up, and then I can go earlier. And, you know, you and I both prefer to be in earlier. That's our boundary, and that's what we stick to. Whereas, like you said, in your first year of teaching, you're adjusting to so many things. And one of the things is your own kind of schedule. So we don't have contract hours as such. You know, we have our contracted hours that we have to complete, but it's up to us when we complete them. Whereas in America, I think their contract hours are like, you know, 3:30 and they go.
Yeah.
If they stay beyond that, they're working beyond their contract. Whereas ours,
Ours is like, you've got 35 hours, you've got 40 hours, whatever it is, work them within the week. Like, you're obviously going to be in school time, but you can do 3 hours at the end of a day, or you can do 2 hours before a day, or you can do half an hour here, you can work your lunch. It's very flexible in Scotland, which is quite good. I would say, like, shout out my mentor from, like, I don't know if everyone does this. In Scotland, in our first year, we get a job given to us, which is amazing, for a year. So it's a year contract in a school, paid, that kind of thing. And with that, you get a mentor. So you get a member of staff, whether that's management or whether that is a senior member of staff, that mentors you throughout that whole year, which is, to be honest, one of the best things I think about the teaching profession in Scotland, because it is such a good support. Now, my mentor was incredible. Shout out Catherine. She genuinely helped me get through that first year. She was so friendly. She was so helpful. She had a meeting with me every single week. We worked through interview processes. We did mock interviews. Like, we did job applications. She really gave me the time. But she also helped me set those parameters and realise that teaching is not my whole life.
Yeah.
And that was really important for me starting, because I could have let it completely take over. It's
easy to let it take over, but obviously there's occasions where sometimes you do let it take over. We're all guilty of it. As much as I'm sitting here saying I don't take work home at the weekends, we're all guilty of having experienced something close to a burnout, or at least feeling overwhelmed. The start of the year is always overwhelming for me, because you just don't know where to begin with things. You're trying to adjust to your new class, get used to how they work, adapt your classroom management, and a whole ton of paperwork at the start of the year.
Yep.
So if there's ever been a time you've been in that situation where you felt overwhelmed or you felt close to kind of burning out, what is it that you would do to kind of bring yourself back?
So this happened to me, I think it happens every year at some point, and it's usually around winter. The nights are really dark. That sounds so stupid. The nights are dark. Of course, the nights are dark.
It's dark at night, newsflash.
Yeah, it's dark at night and it's light during the day. No, obviously it's getting dark at like 4 o'clock. You're waking up and it's dark when you get to work. So really, it's just dark all the time, and it is quite depressing. It's not great. It's cold. You go home and it's cold. Like, school's cold. Like, it's just not great. And also, you have a lot of things to get through in the winter. So the run up to Christmas or the winter holidays is fine. It's busy. It's crazy. You've got shows. You've got like everything going on with Christmas. You've got the nativity going on. You've got all of that craziness, but it's fun and you're into it. The minute you come back in January, it's like the same weather, if not worse, the same amount of daylight, the same cold, and it gets pretty rubbish because you've not got stuff to look forward to in the same sense as you did at Christmas. So for me, looking at that and realising that every year was the first step. Like this year was the first step. I kind of took stock and was like, okay, you know that in February, you're not going to be enjoying your job as much as you were in August.
Yeah.
Or in September. Or in June when everything's winding down. Take stock of that and realise that that is the case. Realise that, okay, it comes in peaks and troughs. It's a roller coaster. And you're going to have to put things in place to make sure that you're still knowing that you want to do the job. Like, it's so easy to think that teaching is rubbish in February.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to think, I want to quit and I want to do something else and, you know, this is too much. But then in June, you're like, oh, the sun's out and everything's great and we're out on the pitch and we're playing rounders. And for me, I think taking stock of that was the first step and then putting things in place. So in February, for example, I made sure I was going home and going straight to the gym. Like, I don't do that right now, unfortunately. But that, for me, in the run up to summer, I was like, I want to feel good for summer. I want to be in the gym 3 or 4 days a week. And I just made that commitment. And it was like a little dark cave that you just went into and it was great for me because obviously the benefits of going to the gym and everything. So that was a decision I made. That's not going to be the decision everyone makes. But that was the decision I made for my own mental well-being, my own health, that okay, 4 o'clock comes, 5 o'clock comes, I'm out this building and I'm straight to the gym. I don't go home, I've got my stuff with me and I just get it done 45 minutes and I'll feel the benefit from that.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I actually remember the time of year you're talking about because obviously we're good friends and we speak about these things quite often. So
that's what you think.
Yeah. I thought that anyway before we started this.
Business partners.
But we are stay in touch and we speak about these things quite often. And you know, it's funny you mentioned the time of year because it seems to be everyone feels that way or most people feel that way at that time of year. But having a good teacher support network, I think is really important. When I started teaching, something I learned really quickly is I think teaching is quite a misunderstood job. And through no fault of people's own, you know, our experience of teachers when we were at school is you go in, you're taught by your teacher, they mark your books, you go home and they go home. And that's what you see surface level teaching. And I think that's still what a lot of people perceive teaching and the profession to be. You know, even when I started teaching my family and friends, we don't have any teachers in our family, or at least on my side of the family. My husband's side of the family do.
Relate.
Well, yeah, that's true. But on my side of the family, at least, there's no teachers. So when I started teaching, I remember like even my parents been, you know, what are you still doing in work at 6 o'clock at night? You know, what do you mean you're going to a meeting? They didn't know that's what it entailed. So in, you know, sometimes people's eyes, your experience of teaching is what you're used to at school or what you're used to with your children being at school. It's not the actual job role itself. You know, what people see on the surface level is very much the tip of the iceberg. You know, that analogy you see where you can see the iceberg and then underneath is everything else that people are doing. I mean, I suppose you could say that about every job, but usually in jobs, you've got a specialist role. You know, you're in sales or you're in marketing or you're in whatever aspect of the company you're in. Whereas in teaching, you have to do it all. You know, you have to
wear so many hats.
Yeah, that one, again, a classic analogy, you wear all the hats as a teacher because you're spending all your time teaching the kids. But then under that, you have so much to do. And I think having someone who's in the profession who you can speak to about that, who understands it, is really, really important because people don't see it. You see, again, the surface level, you don't see what actually goes on. So having someone you can truly speak to, and I think this conversation is really important to have for that reason, that a lot of the time we sit in the staff room and we have a laugh and we talk about things, but we don't get to that sort of deeper conversation of how are you actually doing? You know, if we're all feeling the same way at some point in the year, it's good to have somebody you can go and speak to about that and kind of remind you of what you said, that it comes in peaks and troughs and okay, you might be down right now, but there's going to be something good coming. And with that being said, there's a lot of great things about this job. You wouldn't be sitting here doing this if there wasn't. So what do you think are the best parts that sort of pull you in when you're in that low point? What do you think is going to make it better when you're looking for the sort of highs of the job?
So before we answer that question, can we just analyse the fact that your thing that made you feel better was community and teacher friends and helping each other and leaning on one another and going deep with the conversation, and mine was going to the gym.
The gym and Starbucks.
The gym and Starbucks. And we've not prepped this conversation. That is the two things that came to my mind.
You do what makes you happy.
That's worrying. Anyway, what was the question again? Yeah, the one thing that, what was the question that I would pull out?
Yeah, the sort of highs of the job, the things that you think are the peaks.
Okay. Yes, staff connection and the friendships that you can make within staff, I think is, for me, a benefit. Like, obviously we become friends through our job. We didn't know each other before that. And we've got other people in work that we are quite close to, and across schools. So it's not just every other school that you've worked in or been a student in. That is a great benefit of the job, the community aspect of it, the children. Like,
of course.
I would say the best thing about teaching is seeing the difference you're making in young people's lives every day, and taking stock of looking back over a year and thinking, wow, you were such a different person a year ago. Mm-hmm. And I've had a small part to play in that. Like, I'm not bigging up my involvement in the development of people, but like, it's just such a benefit of the job that you are making a difference in someone's life. I always think about it when I think about dinner table conversations. So we used to talk about our teachers all the time at the dinner table. I don't know if you experienced this. Like, we would talk about teachers. My mum kind of came in and worked in the school, so she knew one or two teachers, kind of. And we used to talk about them extensively, to the point where my dad he just couldn't involve himself in the conversation. He just hated it because it was all school chat. And I think about that all the time, because I'm thinking, what are parents, what are children saying about me and families? Because we have such an impact in people's lives that we don't really actually realise. I talk about teachers 20 years down the line, still with my brother, I still talk about teachers like 20 years down the line that have probably moved on, moved away, like don't actually remember ever teaching me, but they've had such an impact. So I think one thing that you have to remind yourself of as a teacher constantly is you're there for the children, you're there to make a difference in their lives, you're there to educate, but also to be that support system in their lives. Would you agree? I don't know if
Yeah,
that's...
you totally get a snippet of that though. I think it's interesting when you're saying, you know, what are people saying? And one of the little things that just makes you realise that, I think if you're having like parent teacher conferences, if you're doing parents' nights, whatever you're doing, they are really, really long evenings and really long days. So you've taught all day, and then usually parents' nights start pretty soon after the day, 15 minutes, half an hour, and you're going till 9 o'clock at night. It's a really long day.
Yeah, it's savage.
And you're pretty exhausted. But the amount of times you hear, I think sometimes the children don't maybe show up, but like you said, they go home and they talk about it. And you hear them say maybe, they come home and they talk about what they've done all day, and they talk really excitedly about you and what you've done with them, and how you've made them feel and the difference you've made.
And then you start to panic and you're like, what have I said today? What on earth have I been saying?
But that's not something you hear from the children. Do you know, like you said, it's something you reflect on 10 years down the line. You go, remember that teacher that I really enjoyed being in their class and I really enjoyed the experiences they gave me. Yeah. But when they go home, they're given a far more accurate representation of how they actually feel about you. And I think hearing those little things, it just makes you kind of go, okay, I am doing a good job. Because it's not really a job where you get, not that you need to get praised for what you do. It's your job. You come and you do your job. You don't need praise for doing your job well. But it's not really a job where you get that. You might hear the children say, oh, you're the best teacher ever. Or you're,
and you think, okay,
you'll say that to your teacher next year as well. Yeah. Like, I know that. But to hear those little snippets of praise from parents or carers, or even like children who come back to visit you after, a couple of years of being away, being at high school, it just makes everything seem a bit more worth it. Not that it's not worth it without that, but I said it's a long day, and if you're in that slump, but someone gives you that little boost, it can make such a big difference to your well-being and how you're feeling. Yep. And it can just make you realise, like you said, the children are at the heart of it. Yeah.
I think as well, to answer your question about what you should be lifting yourself up with and reminding yourself of, I mean, it's easier said than done. Obviously, when you're in those times of, and we wouldn't discount kind of anyone's situation, and how hard it can be for teachers, it can be really, really tough in some schools and in some classes and circumstances. People's life circumstances can just all pile in at once, and we're not discounting any of that, obviously. But what you said about networking and having teacher supports is so important. having the backing of your management is important, and that's something we've benefited from. But I think equally as important is having teacher friends, not just teacher colleagues. Okay, your work friends are slightly different from your life friends or whatever, but I think having someone that's going through the same experiences as you, that's going through the same, like they're seeing what you're going through, they're seeing the difficulties you're having, or they're seeing, you know, what your class are like, or how much paperwork you've got to do, or any heat you're getting from, you know, parents or managers, like whatever it is you're going through, they're seeing that, and you need to lean on them, and you need to find those people. Whether that's in your school or not is a different thing. There's lots of communities online that people lean on. There's friends that you might have across an authority or across a council that you've met at different things, or you know from different places. I know I've got lots of friends in different schools that I've worked in that I could go to, and if I needed to, I could go and rely on them for support. You also need to be that person to someone else. Yeah.
You need to open the conversation with that person as well. If you notice, you know, they're sitting in the staff room a lot more and not really saying anything, or they're sitting in their room and they're not really saying anything, just go and check on them. Or if you've got a friend who's not in your school and you've not heard from them in a while, send them a message, give them a phone, be that for somebody else, and they'll be that for you as well. And then it becomes more of an honest relationship as well.
And I think the saying "no man is an island" applies so much to teaching, because no teacher should be an island. No one should be in a school feeling like I am completely alone. I have no one to support me here, and I'm really struggling with that. In an ideal world, you would have a community of people around you that support you in every way, and we've been blessed with that. We've also worked on it.
Yeah.
So it's like a kind of two-sided coin. Once it's there, you have to nurture it, and you have to make time for people. You have to, okay, if someone comes in at the end of the day and you're busy in your class, you're working or whatever, you've got your paperwork, and someone needs a 20-minute chat, you have to be there for them and give them that 20-minute chat. If it turns into an hour or turns into an hour and a half, you might be thinking, okay, I've got places to be. But in all seriousness, you do need to be there for people, as well as going to the other people in the same circumstance. People that don't, like, if I went to my brother about it, or if I went to my dad, or if I went to anyone else, they wouldn't really understand what I was talking about. Yeah, I could chat to them about it. My brother would give me zero support, and we know this.
Andy.
Yeah. But it's good because he doesn't even listen to the podcast, and he's refused to. And if he mentions this, I know he will have listened to it, so we'll see. But he wouldn't know what I was talking about, and he'd be like, oh, every job's stressful, which is a good point. He's a lawyer, and that is a stressful job as well. You need to talk to people that are in the same circumstances as you, and not even like just teachers. You need to talk to teachers that are in the same circumstances as you. So that's why it's good to have people in your school, if you can, and this is like, we're talking in ideals, if you can, to rely on and support each other.
We're fortunate in that situation where, you know, similar ages and we like the same things. We're very similar in personality, so that worked for us. But I agree with you that every job is stressful. You're absolutely right. You know, I see the work that my friends do. I know their jobs are stressful, but I think one thing that makes teaching quite challenging to discuss with other people in that aspect is obviously what we spoke about earlier, with it being quite a misunderstood or misinterpreted job, but also...
Oh, you work 9 to 3.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah.
Okay. It's really hard to measure success in teaching because, yes, you all have the same end goal. You know, that's your end goal. Get the children through their school career, nurture them, make sure they're having a positive school experience. But the actual measurement of success in teaching is, how do you measure that? You know, okay, academically, yes, but, you know, in some jobs there's a monetary bonus at the end of the year if you've done well. There's statistics, there's all these things that you can look at. But in teaching, it is so much more than that. Yeah. What makes you a successful teacher, and what one person sees as success is completely different to what another person sees as success. And because of the lack of ability to judge how you're doing, it can be really hard to not just sit there and go, am I even doing well for these kids? Am I even doing something that's going to benefit them? Am I really making a difference to them? And you question your ability constantly. So having someone to sit you down and say, do you know, okay, you maybe didn't have a great day, but these children in your class are safe,
Yep.
they're happy, they are learning, they're having fun whilst they're learning, that is your measurement of success. And it's not something you can actually, put a number to or put statistics to. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So any teacher advice I would give is go to Starbucks and go to the gym.
Go to Starbucks and go to the gym.
And yours is so much deeper.
Yeah, definitely. If I was giving a piece of advice to a new teacher coming in, one, your to-do list is never going to be done.
Yep.
Ever. And that's okay. If your books haven't been marked in 2 or 3 days, nothing bad is going to happen. The children will be fine.
Yep.
You will be fine. You don't need the books marked for the next day. You do not need to be on the latest trends with everything. We said this the last time, but go at your own pace and just remember that your to-do list is more than just what's on the paper. It's the children who are in front of you, and it's getting through the day with them and making sure they're leaving in a place where they have good memories and they're learning happily. It's not about having everything checked off every single day. And find the joy in the little things and a good support network.
Exactly.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Inside Voices. Make sure that you tune in next week for our next episode, which is all about classroom management. And remember that in here, we use our inside voices.